the signal. Good afternoon, everyone. So glad to see you all. My name is Mary Carter Greene. I serve as Canon pastor, and I am so excited that I get to interview our wonderful artist who we've been looking at her photographs out in the Cathedral, and it's entitled Queer Religion. And Frances Marshall, I believe, goes by Fran, correct? Okay, so we'll be calling her Fran today. And I don't want to miss anything, so let me make sure that I glance over all the comments. First of all, it's super important that we are having this exhibit now because it's Pride Month. But not only because it's Pride Month, because tuning into the world around us, LGBTQ rights and dignity are being called are being challenged. And so this is an especially important time for all of us, and especially the church, who upholds the dignity of all human beings, is sponsoring positive LGBTQ plus programs. And I'm delighted that we're going to be talking with you today about the arts. So I'm going to read now a little bit about Fran because I don't want to miss anything. Fran is a classical music and opera photographer who has been working in the industry predominantly in the UK, Europe, and the US. Her clients include some of the world's greatest classical musicians and arts organizations. As a fine art photographer and through her exhibition work, she has been awarded the Portrait of Britain semifinalist at Head-On Festival in Sydney and shortlisted for the Royal Photographic Society International Exhibition in Helsinki, the Photo Festival, and the Taylor Wessing Award. So we are very blessed and lucky to have you here. So delighted that you're here with us. Let's give a big round of applause of welcome.
Thank you. This is nice.
This is awesome.
It's nice to come over here and chat to you. Yeah.
So enough of the formalities. Let's get down to business.
Absolutely.
Because your work has a formality of it's art, but it has such a personal feel about it that despite what I know is painstaking artistic attention, you convey such a beautiful humanity at the core of your images. And I'm wondering, first of all, if we could just back it up to the art itself, since that's your medium, what draws you to photography?
Firstly, thank you. I don't think you can say anything nicer than that. That is so beautiful. Thank you. What draws me to photography? I suppose when it comes to photography, there's as many photographers and specialisms as there are things, you know. And for me, it's just about people. I'm fascinated by people. I just want to sit. For me, it's not even about the picture. It's not about. It's the connection that I have with people and understanding how they want to communicate who they are, and then my interpretation of that and how that looks. Basically, it's that Venn diagram of where that sits then. So it's what they want to communicate, what I see, and then bringing that together and making sure. Yeah, I'm very against voyeuristic photography. I think that the subject has all the rights in the world, and that is always first and foremost what matters to me. So, for example, this collection, there's nothing voyeuristic about it. I would have sat for a very long time, built relationships with each of the subjects here. They're very much living with me as this project tours. You know, I take pictures of every one of them and I send them to them, you know, and then they share it in the same way. They're all with us here, you know, which really matters to me because we're all trying to achieve the same thing.
You told me yesterday that some of the subjects have had friends see the exhibition and then and tell us about that. What happens then?
Oh, they do, especially, for example, Anna and Tamara, they're rabbis, and they're in the photo at the front when you walk into the right. And they were just showing me yesterday. They had friends coming into Grace Cathedral. And they're based in London, but Tamara is American, Anna's English. And they're getting pictures from their friends, sending them images of them in Grace Cathedral, which is just so incredible. It's just lovely. It's really nice. Yeah.
To drill down just a little bit, do you feel like photography presents something about the person in a way that, say, narrative descriptions of someone or biography doesn't?
Yeah, I think that idea of a picture paints 1,000 words is true. It's such a cliche, but it is true. However, I like to add as much context as I can in writing. Okay. I really enjoy photography accompanied by text. I think it's lovely to sit and look at an image, but if you if I took any of those images and put them on the street, would you know that this was, you know, a transgender rabbi? Would you know that this was a gay priest? Would you, you know? So I think in the spirit of how these images are portrayed, we need the context, we need the quote, we need to understand, and that's the voice of the subject coming through. You know, that's very important for me always.
Wonderful. And about how long does it take to take one of these images or settle on it?
It depends, because some of the people that I've worked with, I haven't had as much time as I could with others, or, you know, sometimes I did multiple shoots with some subjects, and then once I saw the image materialize, and there are extended imagery. If you look on the website, you can see there's extended imagery to each of the subjects. So it would just depend. Usually we just sit and talk, and I very rarely posed anybody. It would just be we're experiencing each other, and then I just take the photograph within that space. So they're all incredibly genuine, you know, experiences, because it's a huge departure, because I'm a commercial photographer. You know, I work in studios and I shoot concerts. That's my job. And my images, they'll go on, say, album covers or posters, or, you know, that's kind of what I do. That's my full time. So this is my first exhibition, and it took a long time for me to really go into this fine art exhibition space, because I needed the project to really align me. And this is so departed from what I do, but yet so true to who I am. And that's why I'm so excited how it's moved.
Well,
you know, it's been
tell us
incredible.
how you got here. How did you transition from album covers and the opera world? I mean, you're still doing that, but tell us how this emerged. What was behind it?
So I grew up in Dublin, in Ireland, which is an amazing place. I'm very, very lucky, and I'm incredibly proud to be Irish. And I moved to the UK, and in Ireland, you know, it's predominantly Catholic. We're all much more or less, all of us are raised Roman Catholic. Whether we stay there or not is another thing, but, you know, it's generally 88% of the schools, hospitals are run on a Catholic ethos, and that's still a fact today. So when I moved to the UK, and to London especially, I was just really struck by the melting pot, you know, which you have here as well, you know, and all of these different religions and faiths really coming together. And even though I came out as an atheist, I came, you know what I mean, it was pretty close to when I came out as a lesbian woman when I was 19, and I became that, you know, angry lesbian atheist who had no time for any religion whatsoever, because I saw the pain it caused. And I was sick of this fracturing of myself, which I just thought was so unfair. You know, there was this whole idea of, you know, you walk the path, you play the rules, and then they're like, well, you can't come in. And you're like, okay. So when I moved to London, I realized, even though I'd been an atheist for 10 years, at that point, how Catholic I was, if that makes sense. And just my fascination with religion has always been very high. You know, like I did a project years ago where I just wanted to photograph an enclosed order of Redemptorist nuns in Dublin, and, you know, I built a relationship with them for about a year, and then they let me take photographs of them.
Can you tell us about them? Who
Oh, it
are
was
they?
so amazing. It was just these wonderful women living together, and, you know, something really struck me about, I photographed the head nun in the building, and I just took this photograph of her, and I showed her the back of the camera, and she just looked at it and said, lovely. And it hit me like a bus, because as women, we're just dreadful at loving ourselves. And this woman had none of the things that we spend everything on to make us feel beautiful. And, you know, and by choice, you know, she was very happy in this space. The only reason they leave is to get new shoes or go to the dentist. Everybody comes to them. So, you know, it's like, it's a pretty cool life in a way.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
And, you know, so,
like that.
and she looked at this image of herself, and she really meant it. She said, lovely. And I realized I'd never shown a picture to a female artist that I'd worked with, or, you know, and this makes me sound like a dreadful photographer, but you know what I mean, as in they looked at the image and they truly loved themselves in the photograph. They'll always say, yeah, that's great, but can you fix this, and can you fix my eyes, or can you, you know, I look a bit tired there. There's always that caveat, whereas this was just this complete acceptance, and it really struck me. And I was like, okay, how did she get here, you know?
Yeah.
And it was very powerful, and they all seemed, and there was women my age. I was 24, 25 at the time. As women my age who'd gone in there, and that really fascinated me. What makes us do that? What are we looking for? What are we getting? What all these existential questions. So. Then, sorry, to follow on to your question, then I moved to London, very fascinated by religion. My wife was saying, really, because I wanted to do a collection. I was really struggling on what the subject was going to be. And it was around, she said, it has to be religion. Look, you're so drawn to it, So I had this experience where I went into a Catholic church in East London, and I sat down with the priest to speak to him just about certain things. And then out of nowhere, he started talking about the sin of homosexuality, of abortion. And I was like, oh, we weren't even talking about this. How did this come up, And it just was it really got me. And I was like, you know what, I'm not showcasing this. I'm not spotlighting this. And I know it's important to document everything, but no. So I left it and I parked it. And I was with friends for dinner, and they'd invited, I don't know if this ever happens, but when your friends invite you, they invite the other gays. And then you're sitting at the table and we're all together and we're like, hi.
I invited the other gays.
The other gays, hi. And we're all sitting, thank you.
Welcome.
And we're sitting and we're talking away, and he was a vicar, and he was sitting with his husband. Now that, to me, was, because Roman Catholic priests, they don't marry, they don't have partners, and I was like, whoa. I was like, okay, we need to talk. And we need to talk too much. We need to meet separate from this, because I'll dominate this whole chat. So we went for dinner, and or lunch, it doesn't matter anyway. We had a lovely meal together, and he just said to me, why did you leave your faith? And I said, because I was sick of just, fighting so hard to be accepted. Like, it was ridiculous, made no sense to me. And he said, well, what did you need? And I said, I needed someone to say that it's a gift to be loved and to love, and I said, where is this missing? And he said, well, there's so many people out there who will say that to you. And I said, that's the collection. So that's where it started. And I started working, it took a very long time to really crack in and find out, because you felt like you were in this, really abstract gay bar where you're trying to figure out who's gay and who's not, or whatever, who's queer in this religious world, because you're basically just going up and asking, so it's crazy. It was really odd at the beginning.
Excuse me, knock, knock.
Yeah, hi.
You seem, yeah.
And then the biggest feedback I was getting amongst my world, which is predominantly atheist, was you will never find anybody. That this doesn't exist, and I was like, oh God, okay. And that was the really interesting one. And then,
so you were really drawn to it before you even had more kind of physical or personal evidence that this world was there. You were already headlong into it. That sounds like faith to me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. This has come up a lot of the time in the collection, that there feels like another force, which I am trying to get my head around. But yeah, it's this idea of understanding people. And I think a lot of it to do is when you're raised Catholic, that sense of secrecy and shame is enormous. And I know it exists in other faiths too, but what I was kept being told was, you'll find them, but they won't be photographed. They won't be part of this. And what was validating, actually, is that the most difficult religion to work with in this collection was the Roman Catholic.
The most difficult?
Difficult, yeah. So that was really validating, because we all have ideas of which one's the religion that does the most, and it was my own.
And what did it validate for you, your sense that your experience was...
The weight of it, yeah.
You knew that truth.
The weight, the weight was real. I wasn't imagining it. It was huge. The only openly gay Roman Catholic priest that I could find with a congregation, which is a big difference. There are some out there, but they don't have a congregation. Please feel free to tell me if there's anybody else that I haven't found, is Father Brian Massengale in Harlem. I don't know if you've met him, but
was he in your interview at
yes,
St. John the Divine? I did hear him.
He's a very special person, and there was a really beautiful moment when I went to photograph him. He invited me up to St. Charles Borromeo up in Harlem, and he'd cleared me to come in and photograph a service, and you know, and I walked in and I was taking the pictures, and he said, "No, go ahead during the service. It's okay." And I was like, "Yeah, no, great." And people were coming up to me from the service and saying, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" Excuse me. And I was like, "I've been cleared." It's like, I mean, I was kind of like, "What's going on here?" But it happened about 10 times during this short service. I was like, "What is going on?" And then they all came up to me afterwards and said, "I'm so sorry. You need to understand how protective of him we are." I was like,
Oh, wow. Isn't that beautiful?
The whole congregation saw him as the most valuable diamond. And that was just so powerful to me.
Yeah.
You know, it was really beautiful. And he's really special. He's really special, you know. So they're you know, everybody in the group is special, in the collection is so wonderful, and they've trusted me with so much.
Well, that really comes across how deeply they go into their own experience and how they share that with you, in just the little snippets we see, but also in the images that we see of them. And I was really struck by the Mark, Right Reverend Mark
Oakley.
Yes.
Yeah.
And his is the image of the man sitting at a desk, like maybe studying for a sermon, or I'm not sure, but he's and you see kind of a profile of him, and he's reading or working, writing. And his passage, what stood out for me is he said, you know, I had my greatest worry was coming out to my grandmother, and that what she said was, and correct me as I get this wrong, but what she said was, you know, what I was most worried about is that you wouldn't trust to tell me. So she had known, you know, and I was very close to my own grandmother, and she died before I could could say it, but. You know, that was really healing for me to read that and think, like, I know my grandmother loved me, you know, and I know she loved all of me.
Yeah.
So, you know, I want you to know that the image is healing in itself and in the story of the person and in their transferal of that. But that was healing for me.
That's
to
beautiful.
read that.
Yeah.
And that's just one of them.
Well, he'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
I think, it's this idea of, I think I would certainly feel, it's interesting, I would feel like such a failure as a mother, as a friend, as a partner, if someone felt they couldn't tell me who they were. Like, I would carry that burden, and I'd feel they should never have, you know. So, I can...
To know that safety.
I would hope that everyone in my life feels safe with me, you know. We all want that, don't we? Because we know what it's like when we feel conditional love, you know. So that's a lot about the collection's about as well. Yeah.
Okay, here's a kind of little deep probing one. Go as far as you
Okay.
want. But you talk a lot about love.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about love, and I wonder how and I'm referring back to the example of the nun who loved herself, you know, so much. And I wonder, has this exhibition helped you love yourself in new ways or love others in new ways?
She wasn't joking.
You can move on to loving my socks again. I mean,
I love those socks. Well, see, I did a lot of this project pregnant.
Oh, beautiful.
And, you know, it's interesting, you know, I went to this incredible acupuncturist when I'd found out that we had gotten pregnant, and we were so excited. And she said to me, I don't know if you know this, but pregnancy is an incredibly creative time in a woman's life. No one says that to you, do they? Like, because you're usually just associated with all the, you know, the dreadful bits of it, you know. But I had a very nice pregnancy, which I'm very lucky to be able to say. And to work in this way, I might go round about what you've asked me, but I hope I get there in the end. The big thing that I wanted for myself, my wife's child, was to not come into a world where there was this feeling of hatred's maybe not the right word, but that there's adversity to them. And I would have always identified religion as the main cause of homophobia and, you know, queerphobia in general. And my goal was to create a community of love for them. And that's the very selfish goal of this entire project. So that's why this exists, and it worked.
It sounds very generous to me.
Well,
to create a world that your child will be loved in and welcomed in, and the rest of us.
Oh, it's a gift to my son. Yeah.
Sound selfish.
Oh, okay. Thanks. But you know, the two women again that I've mentioned, Anna and Tamara, like my son is, you know, hangs out with. Tamara's actually pregnant in that photograph, and our babies are very close. You know, and you know, myself and my wife went to Gay Eid there last year, which was beautiful, a wonderful experience. Our whole world has become incredibly inclusive because of this, because I'd be the first one to say atheism is it's hard lines there. If you talk about how this project is being received in a way, religious organizations have been saying, come on in, we want this, you know, we want to showcase this, exactly like Grace Cathedral have been. St. John the Divine, New York, you know, like place, and in the UK, the synagogues, you know, it's been very positive. The art galleries are like, this is too churchy, because art galleries are generally from an, you know, an atheist standpoint, my world, if I want to say that, which I would have been, you know, and that divisiveness does not work anymore. We can't stop talking to each other. Like, look what Marianne Budd did.
Yeah. She's our hero.
You know?
Yeah.
So when it comes to self-love, I definitely, through this project, feel far more connected to my spirituality. Not my religion, if that makes sense. I sometimes feel religion is a man-made construct in a way that, for me, it was this idea of you must walk this path. You must not veer off this path in order to be loved. That's not unconditional love. That's not what we're meant, you know, it doesn't line up. So for me, it's about spirituality and connecting, because I think if religion in its truest form, and this is across all the faiths when I've spoken to people in this project, it's about unifying your entire self. We hear the word unnatural used around our community all the time. I think one of the most unnatural things is to be who you're not. The most natural thing is to truly be the expression that you are meant to be.
Can someone write that one down?
Yeah, the natural. It's weaponized against us, around our families, around who we are. It's toxic how they use it. We are so natural. We are the most natural expressions of humanity. I'll push it that far, because we're not lying. You know, we've made big choices, we've made big sacrifice to live this life. And, you know, if we become parents, we then have to live it for our children in a way, you know, and it's how do we push that forward? How do we present that? And it's exhausting, but we have to do it. We don't have a choice, and we all become accidental activists when we don't have the energy, you know. But we have to. We don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Because look what's happening. We have to.
Well, thank you for being that activist. Let's return to some of your subjects a little bit, and tell us about the first subject you photographed and interviewed, and then perhaps if there's one who surprised you, or the experience about which surprised you a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The first subject was Jarrell Robinson Brown, and he's just a spectacular human, you know. And I suppose there was a wonderful man called Ian Keatley who sadly died last year very suddenly. And he was a very good friend of mine, but he worked for Southwark Cathedral. And I went to speak to him about this project, and we had lunch. And he was a music director in Southwark Cathedral. And he said, Jarrell Robinson Brown. He put me straight in touch with him, you know, and he connected me to so many wonderful people in this project. But yeah, I spent time with Jarrell, and it was just a very powerful moment. And that image has won a lot of independent awards as part of the collection. Can you describe that one
for us?
Yeah, he's an Anglican priest, and he's just to the right when you walk into the room. Okay. You'll see he's just a wonderful wonderful, kind soul, and he has a little Jack Russell dog that sits on the altar with him. Called Seth. Really nice, really lovely energy.
Gonna change St. Francis Day around here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and then they all have amazing story. Like, I've always struggled. I think there's a huge amount of Islamophobia within the queer community, and this project really opened up that part of my brain to certain aspects that I hadn't thought of. One being that an awful lot of queer spaces are alcohol focused. So if you are a queer Muslim, you're really falling between two stools because you have to abandon a huge part of you to engage in another. I hadn't thought of it that way. So finding that space is tricky. And I think we really need to watch the Islamophobic rhetoric in general, obviously, but when it comes to our queer space and queer community, that all we're doing is alienating queer Muslims when we do that, and it's very dangerous, really, to do that, because people become even more isolated then. Which is what Hidayah is, a wonderful charity here in the US, and their director Zayn is one of the subjects in the collection, and I worked with him in New York. But Hidayah is a really brilliant organisation. They're in the UK and they're here as well. So the Muslim subjects really fascinated me in certain aspects because I suppose I didn't grow up with the Islamic religion or Islamic faith around me. So it was very interesting to have conversations around that. There's a transgender woman, Shaira Chowdhury, in the collection, and her mother is a dressmaker. And when she came out, her mum started making all her clothes. And that catches me, it does, doesn't it? Because we need trans joy. We need so much trans joy. There's another subject, Dina, which is an alias name, and I really struggled with the idea of including someone who was anonymous in the project because I felt like there was a bit of a double down there. I was worried about what it would say. And we had a really long chat about it, and she said to me, do you realise aligning anonymity with shame is a Western construct? And I hadn't thought
Okay, hold on.
before.
I have to think that one through.
Yeah. So we
How so?
say
Tell us
hiding
more.
our face is someone who's not proud of who they are, or someone who, whereas actually that's a Western construct. I'd never thought of it that way before. Whereas she told me that her anonymity allows her to be truly herself in her faith and in her queerness. So I was like, okay, yes, we will do this. This is beautiful. And how do we do this? And so that's an image where it's mainly pinks and purples. And she's sitting on the floor. It was a really interesting shoot to do. And there's a whole thing around how the images are captured. So I'm used to working in studios, I'm used to working with artificial light and all that sort of thing. This collection is all shot in natural light. There's no lighting I've created, as you see is what I've seen. And the lens that I use is a 50mm lens, which is what the eye sees. So it is as real as it gets. And my reasoning for doing that is that there's just so much. And there's a place for it, don't get me wrong, but there's so much in queer media that is elevated to a point that I don't feel any connection with a lot of it, Sometimes I just want to see a boring lesbian making a cup of tea, Like, I need that, because that's me, We're really boring. Like, myself and my wife are very boring, we're very suburban, we're very, we live a very, I know we're both creatives, that's cool, but, we're on the day-to-day, it's boring, and it's lovely, and I love it.
And it's beautiful to be who you are,
But it's just like, it's not always this like, wow,
flamboyant.
No, it's not. It's just like, I think we need a little bit more normality in our queer ways. I look at kids' books, and as brilliant as it is to have these titles that are solely focused on pride and queer life, and I'm like, do you know what? It would just be great if the little dog had two dads, and it was just part of the story, It didn't have to be, because that's how it's mainstream then, and then it's, do you know what I mean? Like, and there's room for everything. There's no criticism what I'm saying, but I just, sorry, the irony, I've called the project Queer Religion, but, it's just the normality that we're missing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time, that's the bit that I miss.
Yeah.
Because I just want to be left alone a lot of the time. Don't you? Just want to be, yeah.
No, I never want to be left alone.
No, not at all. Look at those socks.
Oh my gosh, I'm so enthralled, in the conversation. It's so wonderful. And I'm wondering, and I can see on people's faces how engaging this is for them. So we're going to get to questions, don't worry, but I get to ask a few more still. And I wonder, how have people responded to the project? You've been all over the place. Remind us where you've been. How have people responded? And then let's make sure we get to that Catholic high school in England. That
was amazing.
That was so important.
So I went to a really special place that it went to. I'm a student of Maynooth University in Ireland, which is also a seminarian college which trains Catholic priests, and they put an impermanent connection there, which was huge for me because I was really
amazing.
And they were fantastic, and they're
wonderful.
so loyal to their alumni, and they're really, really kind.
It's really amazing.
And it was run by this beautiful festival called Arts and Minds, and that was great, and that is permanently sitting there in the President's Building in the university. That was huge because that's where I came out.
Yeah,
At 19. And to think that the one thing that I hid about myself was now what was being celebrated in the President's Building in the university.
Wow.
Like, what?
Oh,
is
congratulations.
going on?
That's really
And I don't mean that
amazing.
to be, arrogant.
No.
I mean it as in, like, it's just one of those moments where it's like, what was I thinking?
Affirmed. Yeah.
Yeah. There's that. It's been to New York last year, which was absolutely incredible. In St. John the Divine in Kennington. It has been to Exeter Cathedral as well. I'm going to forget places now because it's gone on a lovely tour. We went to King's College in London as well, and we did talks and panels.
Our former vice dean is at King's College
Oh,
as
really?
the dean for religious life. Yeah. What is the
amazing.
title? Is that correct? It's anyway, big time. She's up
Yeah.
there.
Amazing. Yeah, no, it's a really great place. And now I'm in conversations with Cambridge University and Oxford University.
Oh, fantastic. How
So
amazing.
yeah, I'm really excited about that. Yeah. And so it's been received very, like, you would think, I thought this would get a really big backlash, and it hasn't. It's been very positive in the same way that you've got your Pride steps. Nothing bad's ever happened.
Not that I know of. Yeah.
Just need to put it out there.
Right on.
And it's been very positive. Like, the odd Facebook troll, but nothing of worth that has come at it. You know what I mean? In a big way. It's generally been very beautifully accepted.
Well, it's
generally,
really courageous.
Sorry, say that again.
Really courageous of
thank
you to
you.
put it out there without knowing and anticipating that there may be backlash.
I think a lot of shock from people being really surprised that, you've openly gay religious leaders. Really surprised, which shows how far away we are. Sometimes I say it's a project to cross the algorithm.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. It's a paradox, and they shouldn't be paradoxes, but they are.
I think also the interfaith piece that you're describing today is a wonderful addition, perhaps. I don't know if you were expecting that, but can you tell us any more about that?
Well, the big thing I realized with it was that I was meeting really prominent openly queer rabbis, really prominently openly queer priests, really prominently queer Muslim leaders, and they were all fighting the same fight and they didn't know each other. I was like, and they were literally, I'd gone from shooting someone in the morning to working with somebody in the afternoon. It was half an hour away from each other, in London.
And at St. John the Divine, you brought them together.
Yeah.
And they were all part of a panel, and we can connect you with that link to that interview. But they're all together talking about her work and their own experience.
Yeah.
It's, so you created an interfaith moment.
Isn't that crazy?
It's really why. I mean,
do you not think that's really
amazing.
funny? Yeah, no, because I have so many Jewish friends, and they're like, "Look at you bringing all the Jews together." I'm like, no, because just this little like atheist Irish, ex-Catholic, it's like, what's going on? And like bringing it all together. But that's what I love to do in general. I love bringing people together in any way, and then this
that comes through.
But yeah, like to have people communicating and talking to each other and connecting within the project has just been absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
It's been just wonderful to see that happen. And yeah, I've loved that.
Yeah, it's really formative for the viewer too.
Yeah.
So they're connecting with each other, but we're also learning.
But we need to learn from each other. Like we're so divisive now. And it's all because of our phones. I really think our algorithms are dreadful. If I pick up a friend's or somebody who doesn't align with my politics, and I look at their Facebook feed or their Instagram, oh my God, like we're being poisoned in our brains. We're not talking to each other anymore. And yeah, we become sort of single-minded and aligned in our own experience and what religion means to us, whereas actually faith means very different things to very different people. Just like learning so much from each other is vital when we're all fighting the same thing, same conversation, same feelings across these faiths. Crazy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing people together and helping us see that as well. You had an experience at a high school where the questions from the young people were kind of surprising for you, do you want to share that experience?
So George White is a subject in the collection. He's a transgender man and religion teacher in a Catholic school up in Leicester, so it's north of London, a good bit north of London. So he's absolutely amazing, runs this like fantastic diversity program within the school, secondary school. Anyway, he said, I want you to talk to all of the year groups. I was like, okay. And I actually trained as a secondary school teacher, so I was like, okay, this is really going back to that space.
Good job.
Anyway, yeah, we started, and you start from kids who are 11 up until they're 16. And the difference in the conversation. So we opened up questions, and I have to say I was terrified. So I gave a talk and presented the imagery and all that, because I know what teenagers do.
And sorry, was this a public school or a Catholic school? I can't remember what you said.
Catholic school. Yeah,
okay.
but public school, state school. But, actually, yeah. And the questions came, and they were, wow. Like, how did you get pregnant? Shot at me. I was like, wow. We're not doing that one. It's stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like this real, and then it started being slung at me, and I was like, oh God. And then and you feel your defenses coming up.
Sure.
And then it just dissolved, because I realized this is what it feels like to be a visibly queer person in front of 500 11-year-olds. They don't have it. So either I'm going to talk to them because they're not making fun of me. They genuinely want to know. Now, I'm not going to tell them, but we're going to have a conversation.
Be gentle.
We're going to be gentle, because it's okay, what is happening here? You don't have this visibility. I'm a unicorn to you right now. Because as well, teachers don't talk about their personal lives. So you know what I mean? Like, and I'm coming in as a guest speaker, etc. And George was there. We navigated it all together, because there was so much happening. And then there was just more questions that were coming, and it was just about working through each of them. And then every single year group asked me, will your parents still love you if you're gay?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, how is this question still being asked? And it really caught me. And then they'd come up afterwards and ask the same question. It was huge. It was so prevalent. And I just couldn't believe it. And I kept answering. I said, it's your parents' responsibility to love you exactly as you are, and not for you to convince them. Just please hear me when I say that. And then you deal with that, let them behave in whatever way they need to, but you must be who you are. And but yeah, it was really game changing for me to have that, and I'm building a whole education part to the project because of that. to bring it to schools and work out how to present it in a way and have conversations and working with the teachers and, it's a subject that works in because, it works with the history department, it works with the sociology departments, the religious departments, and how do we get that conversation happening in a respectful way, and to move it that way, yeah.
Oh, terrific, thank you. Those kids were lucky to hear from you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about the future for this project and what are you hoping for with it?
I think it's moving into more university spaces now, which I'm enjoying. It's really lovely and having sort of big debates around what's happening and how we can move things forward because it's all great to chat, but we need to look after each other now. There's threats everywhere. There's threats to our families. There's threats to who we are. Our trans community are suffering in a way that I've never seen in my life. They're being politicised. In the UK, there was just this, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's been this dreadful bill stopping trans women using female toilets, which was funded by J.K. Rowling privately. All these children who grew up adoring this incredible author.
My own children.
Yeah, like how do we process that? And actually, the argument was to make women feel safer. It's like, where did you get that one from? Because now all that's happened is that any male can walk into a toilet now and say they're a trans man. They've actually, it's made the risk that they talk about, which wasn't there in the first place, let's face it, even worse in what they're talking about. It's just crazy. It's crazy. And we've been let down by the government in that area. I'm deeply saddened by that. A government that I voted for and did not protect. I did not watch that one at all because it's a slippery slope. And I think for me with the project, I carry guilt as a gay person because I feel the gay community has deeply let down the trans community. I think we've been dreadful. I think we've been so concerned about what we've needed ourselves. And I'm the first one to hold my hands up and say I'm guilty of it myself, and it's now we have to really get together and be as strong as we can for them because we know exactly what's going on. We know how it feels. That the rhetoric that's being used is exactly what we grew up with. We know what it does. We know how dangerous it is. And there's a world that's been created that is unlivable for trans people. They're creating an unlivable world. These tiny stories, if you don't mind me sharing this with you, but there's I'm a very good friend who's a trans woman, and we met for lunch in London. And she wasn't drinking anything. And she was being very picky with food and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, why aren't you? I thought she was sick or something. Yeah. And she said, I can't drink anything. I'm too scared to go to the toilet.
Oh, dear.
And you're like, and it sounds like a small thing. That's not small. Having that extra labor of your mind working all the time. We really just need to ramp it up because we're how do we protect people? How do we just not let these things slide? And that's the future for the collection for me is to really raise awareness to that space as much as I can. My next project is going to be on family, which is so closely related to faith. So I'm particularly looking at queer families and the nuances and what we bring that others don't.
Terrific.
And what we can absorb and learn from each other, because we need that visibility too.
For sure. Yeah.
So that's the future for the collection, and then the next part of that then. Yeah.
Well, I'm so grateful to you for answering all of my questions, and I
thank
wonder,
you.
before we open it up to the group here, is there any question I didn't get to that you'd like to, anything else you want to share with us?
I feel we did a good job.
I think we did really well. Yeah.
I think we did good. Yeah. I'm very open to hearing whatever. Thank you so much.
Well, then I will open the floor. Kathy.
I have to say, when I just glanced at the exhibit, I want to go back and look at it more. But the fact say it was natural light, to me, looks very godly.
Oh,
Mm.
It
wow.
seems like the vision of all these people is embraced with light and it's peaceful looking.
Mhm.
There doesn't, I mean, internally, I'm sure there's a lot of pain going on,
Mm.
but at least in that imagery, it's almost like the Holy Spirit, she has gone inside and given them some gift of peace, and I think that's very important.
Thank you.
For that.
Thank you so
Beautiful,
much.
beautiful pictures.
That's lovely. I was reading this book. I went to your very famous city bookshop, City Lights bookshop.
Mhm.
And I bought a little book for my son yesterday. He was trashing the shop. It was really awkward. He's a toddler. And it was Angela Davis' book for kids.
Oh,
And it was
wonderful.
Be the Light.
Mm.
My wife's surname is Light. And it's really special to me. I don't know
Yeah.
why. Well, I do, because it's just gorgeous. But when we got married, it meant that Light came into my surname
Oh,
too.
sweet.
And yeah, we have to listen to that light that we have. The world feels dark and scary right now.
Mm.
And we forget that we can actually do something. It's like, there was that, sorry, I'm so dreadful at actors' names, but there was a very famous Star Wars actress, can't remember her name. But
Carrie Fisher?
Thank you, Carrie Fisher said, take your broken heart and turn it into art. And that really summarizes this project
It
for
really
me.
does. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And that's what I think that's what we have to do. Now is the time for art to really scream as much as we can. Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions? Ken?
There's throughout the collection, what really struck me was I felt so proud of the strength of each image,
Mm.
but the images were tender
Okay.
at the same
Yeah.
time. And so there was this accessibility into it and the narrative that it created a story around the whole image. It was just so intriguing. And now I understand that you got to know the
Yeah.
subject and use of natural light, and how I'm like, that's that capturing the tenderness of a moment.
I'd push back with you slightly there, because each subject in the collection are people who are truly connected to who they are. And that's, no matter, like that is so, when you meet them, it's so obvious. So I think that's what you're seeing. Like the confidence of everybody, like, and that simple inner confidence, that lovely confidence that we all want. It's there, and I think that's what you're seeing, because there's a peace inside all of them that is, it's enviable, really. It's beautiful. Yeah, but thank you for seeing that, though, because hi.
One of the most beautiful things is I could almost journey through my whole life as I went through the photographs. Like 7-year-old me was felt and thought of as I went through it. 30-year-old me was felt and thought of as I went through the photographs. And there were moments where I could almost, this longing for, like, I wish 19-year-old me could have seen this photograph, this collection, and realize whether like love could have come quicker, right? Like love for myself could have come quicker if I'd just seen just the radiance from each photograph, and the love and confidence that each person has.
Yeah.
So thank you for carrying just that journey through every photograph
Wow.
and every aspect of.
Thank you so much. The reason, there's many reasons why I created it, but I've been so sick of hearing people not wanting to tell their parents. People would say to me, "Oh, don't come out to them. They're very religious." They'll say that all the time. You'll hear that conversation all the time. And I wanted to create a collection where if anyone felt that way or they got that rebuttal, they're like, "Well, here's this collection," and just to have something there, that was accessible, because as great as books are, no one has time to sit, if they're not interested in a subject, to sit down and don't really care about a subject, even though they should if it's a relative or someone who needs them to read it. But like, it's the immediate, it's the photograph. Here you go. This person, this person, this person. They all believe that you know, and they're all leaders in the world that you believe in. They're all, and these are not fringe leaders. These are, you know, really high up deans in cathedrals. You know, they're rabbis in the top synagogues in London. They are really powerful leaders, and they're saying it's okay, and not that it's okay, that it's a gift. And that's what's really important to me as well, to have that representation. But thank you, that was gorgeous. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm wondering, you were talking about your day job of taking photos of performers.
Yeah.
I'm an actress and I started modeling at 2, so I can certainly relate to that sort of artifice, as gorgeous as it can be. And I'm also the daughter of an opera singer, so
Oh, there you go.
those kind of photos
Welcome
are
home.
very
Yeah.
striking, very beautiful, but in such a different way. And I adore your work here. It is so moving and so beautiful, and an introduction, and so intimate. And I'm wondering how this project has maybe changed your look at your photography in your day job world.
Great
Because
question.
performers, we are, when we do our headshots, when we do our promotional stuff, we are putting on an act.
Yeah.
Has it changed the appeal or how you work technically, or do you keep it separate?
I haven't changed my technical process, but I think I've changed so much through this project that it has shifted how I work a bit. If that makes sense. You've only made me think of this now, so bear with me. I'm verbally processing live here. Sorry.
Challenging.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you've learned something or experienced something, it's hard to go back to who you were and how you saw it.
But it's all growth, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I think certainly for me, you know, because myself and my wife run our company together, we create, she's a brand specialist and web developer, and I've always come from photography from a point of branding. So if an opera artist comes to me, I'm talking about, okay, what's the role and what's the stage? It's the first question, like where are your dreams sitting? You know, it's the first question I'll be asking them. Where do you want to be, and what art and what role do you want to be singing, you know, because that will tell me exactly who they want to be and portray, and then I will shoot them there, basically, so that, you know, to be crass about it, they get a conversion from working with me, you know, they feel that it was an investment in themselves. That bit has gotten really strong because I feel so much more connected to myself and how I want to push that bit forward, that when I have those conversations, they're deeper. So it's definitely helped everything. And it gives me a lot more diversity in the work that I'm doing. Like, yeah, when I go back next week, I'm working with different concerts, different artists, working in that way. And then, you know, I'm doing a lovely talk like this. Like, it just, my life has become so colourful with this. It's been amazing. And yeah, all those itches are being scratched, which is lovely.
So terrific.
Yeah.
The liberating, lovely quality of the work you're doing, like thinking about what you said, I was thinking about how others could see the work who aren't here. And I remember saying I did an architecture school where I proposed shades where you would have photographs, so at night you would see like portraits of people who are in the building. So that just could be so cool. And also listening to your Dublin accent reminds me of something I memorized in college from James Joyce. They were all shades, better to pass boldly in the full measure of some, I forget what it was, light than to wither and fade like a shade. But what you're doing is so full of light.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, you know, it seems like for most people who are not in a faith community, who are LGBTQ, mentioning faith or even alluding to faith can be such a wall. And it can be so difficult for people to see who we are because of trauma and just because of the hatefulness that so much of religion has projected for so long. And I'm wondering, has your work, are you aware of any people maybe coming to like a slightly different impression of what faith might entail? Or have people come to you from the world where they would normally say, I want nothing to do with this, and maybe have some different ideas?
Yeah, like I'm somebody who I feel, you know, I really resonate with religious trauma. Now, I didn't refer to it as trauma. I was just like, oh, put it over there, you know, which probably is trauma. So I get it. I just had zero tolerance. Wouldn't even have a conversation with a religious person. And actually my roommate, you know, is an exceptionally religious guy and I adore him. And, you know, he's the kindest person in the world. But we would argue about Catholicism big time. I felt his faith was almost a rejection of me, you know, which is not true. Because, you know, you do, you know, there's a phrase at home, a la carte Catholics. I don't know if you've heard it. Picking and choosing what you want from the faith, you know, and this is, you know, it's very, you know, because nearly everyone will go to Mass on Christmas Day or, you know, at home. And, you know, actually what you end up getting is being completely bludgeoned by the priest who's like, none of you are here all the time and you come in and we have to listen to this, you know, because we pick and choose what we want. We all want to feel Christmassy, you know. So in a similar way, it's like, well, can you truly identify as Catholic and embrace your queer family and friends? That's an argument and a conversation. I would argue, yes, you can, because when people like Brian Massengale get loud, there's your church. If we look at the for me, I wanted to kind of create a league table amongst the religions that I was looking at and see who's the most accepting, and I said, like, for me, Roman Catholic was the most problematic, a lot to do with the fact that celibacy is such a big thing that we don't talk about sexuality at all. And that's how they get you. Because you cannot talk about desire, love, you know, romantic love in any way. And that's so problematic and so difficult and causes a lot of pain and misconception as well. But I did this talk at a synagogue in North London, and I had a really amazing conversation with a lady there, because for me, I felt the Jewish faith was the most advanced when it came to this conversation. And there, of course, there's areas of Judaism that wouldn't be, but, you know, I found in general, you could live very happily as a progressive rabbi or majority rabbi, be openly queer and live a very normal, happy life with, you know, and I wanted to know why. I said, why, how has this happened and how have you guys achieved this? So I thought no better to open this conversation up in a synagogue. And there was a lady who I would guess was in her late 80s. And she said, and as problematic as this is, by the way, she said it's all to do with babies. And she said the Jewish faith is so aligned with science, whereas other faiths reject science, that once the queer community could start to have children, we left them alone. So there is a huge drive, and don't get me wrong, I know I'm being very simplistic about how I speak, but I thought it was a way I hadn't thought about it before, because faiths are all about, this is the reason I'm talking about my next project being around family, it's so connected. Religion is all about family. How are we creating family? How are we pushing it forward? This struggle for, you know, this fear of extinction that religions have. And I suppose my argument would be at this point, is queerphobia a byproduct of a fear of extinction? Is this where this has come from? And we have yet to update ourselves. So because if we reject science, we're going to reject queer families. Because science plays a huge role there. Whereas the Jewish faith embraces science in a way that others don't. So it's just things that I'm picking up and sharing in conversations like this. So yeah, does that answer, you know, this idea of like bringing people into new understandings of their religions and seeing it. Sometimes it's strategy, you know what I mean? Outdated strategy that causes huge pain, you know, that we need to update.
Well, we are, I'm afraid, at the end of our time. Those bells told us that it's time to end the formal portion of our conversation. But can you hang around for a couple minutes?
I'd love to hear this lady's question. Would that be okay? If we had a moment.
Okay, yeah.
Is that okay? You know, because you were here first, and I'd love to hear your question. I love her outfit. Don't you love her birds?
We already talked about the hummingbirds.
So you say that the Roman Catholics were the denomination most difficult. I'm kind of surprised by that because I don't. Maybe there are not a whole lot of evangelical churches in the UK, but here, I just when I think about religious trauma, so much of it is perpetrated among my friends who grew up in evangelical families.
It's brilliant that you've brought up so the evangelical groups are on a rise in the UK, and it's terrifying.
Did you work with any of them?
Yes. So, and you know what? I'm going to correct myself. Yes, there you go. That is scarier world than the Roman Catholic space. Jane Ozanne, who's in the collection, she's a prolific evangelical leader, at the time, and she's an openly gay woman, and she's done huge work there, but at huge cost. But it's very frightening, actually, what's going on there. Really scary, and they're rising with huge money. In the UK, but they are the greatest threat to openly queer lives and religious organisations. It's very frightening, actually. Yeah, but thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
Okay, well, I must honor everyone's time and
Thank
wrap
you.
the formal part to a close. But I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say your work is helping us mitigate the dangers that we feel. And I certainly feel like you've helped our family come together around a really important area and helped
you
us learn
so
to love
much.
ourselves and each other better. So let's give Fran a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it wasn't enough time, so guess what? You have another chance. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., if you're a Grace Arts member, Fran's going to be giving a talk at 4 o'clock tomorrow, and it's not too late to become a Grace Arts member. Talk to any staff here, and we'll help you do that, or go online. We do rely on your support to help have the many, many wonderful exhibits we have, and so we invite you to give as you are able. And if you text the word WONDER to 76278, then it'll go to support our arts programs. I just want to say thanks again, Fran. What a
you so
wonderful
much.
conversation.
Thank
My
you.
heart is full.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's lovely.